Nathan Reed was no stranger to the thrills of life. As an experienced extreme sports photographer, he spent most of his time capturing heart-stopping moments, parachuting from planes, racing down steep mountain trails on his bike, and scuba diving in remote, dangerous locations. His wife, Emily, was his biggest supporter. They had met years ago at an adventure sports event, where their shared love for adrenaline had instantly sparked a connection. She had always loved his adventurous spirit, even though she was more reserved and grounded in her own life as a marketing manager. Their relationship had always been built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect. For years, they had balanced Nathan's demanding career with a steady, loving home life. They had a daughter, Ava, who was 5, and Nathan loved them both more than anything. His work often took him away from home, but he always made an effort to call and check in whenever he could. But recently, something had changed in their marriage. At first, it was subtle. Emily had become more distant, retreating into her phone, avoiding eye contact when he returned from his trips. She no longer seemed interested in the stories he shared about his work or the thrilling experiences he had during his travels. Nathan didn't think much of it at first, brushing it off as the result of her work stress and the challenges of managing their household while he was away. But then, one evening, Nathan returned early from a project in Switzerland, hoping to surprise Emily. As he pulled into their driveway, he saw something that made his stomach drop. Emily's car was parked outside, but the front door was slightly ajar. Nathan's curiosity piqued, and he walked inside, calling out to his wife. "Emily? Ava?" His voice echoed through the house, but there was no answer. He stepped into the living room, and as he glanced around, he noticed something strange, an empty glass of wine on the coffee table, and faint laughter coming from the kitchen. Nathan felt a pang of discomfort. He walked toward the sound, only to stop in his tracks when he heard the voice of a man. "I don't think Nathan will mind," the man's voice said, followed by a soft chuckle. Nathan stood still for a moment, trying to make sense of what he had just heard. He didn't recognize the voice. The next words sent a chill down his spine. "I've missed you," the man continued. "When can we see each other again?" Nathan felt like his heart had been ripped out of his chest. He didn't know what to think. Without thinking, he turned around and left the house, his pulse racing. The storm inside him was growing. Nathan drove aimlessly for an hour, trying to process what he had just overheard. The initial shock had left him speechless, but as the minutes ticked by, the realization hit him hard: his wife was having an affair. He parked his car by the river and sat there in silence. His mind kept replaying the conversation. Who was this man? Why hadn't Emily mentioned him? Why was she hiding this from him? The questions gnawed at him, and he knew he couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. He needed to know the truth. That evening, Nathan returned home, but he didn't speak to Emily right away. He needed time to think and prepare himself for the confrontation. He noticed she had left the front door open, but he didn't care. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. Emily was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. She didn't even look up when he walked in. "Hey, Nathan. You're home early," she said, her tone flat, as if nothing was wrong. She wasn't smiling, but there was an unsettling calmness in her demeanor. Nathan didn't respond right away. He just stared at her, taking in the sight of the woman he had loved for so long. But now, all he could feel was a deep sense of loss. He had always trusted her, but now that trust was gone. "Who is he?" Nathan finally asked, his voice steady, but his insides were in turmoil. Emily froze, her hand shaking slightly as she placed the spoon down on the counter. She avoided eye contact and took a deep breath. "Nathan, it's not what you think," she said, her voice defensive. "It's not an affair. I swear. It's just complicated." Nathan could barely believe what he was hearing. He had heard enough to know the truth. I heard everything, Emily, he said, his voice low. I heard you talking to him. The man you're seeing behind my back. I heard you say, I've missed you. Her face went pale, and for the first time, she looked genuinely guilty. I didn't want you to find out this way, she whispered. It's been going on for a while now. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you. Nathan's heart was pounding in his chest. He wanted to scream, to shout, to throw something. But all he could do was stand there, silently processing the words that were tumbling out of her mouth. Who is he? Nathan demanded. Tell me everything. His name is Derek, Emily said softly, her voice trembling. He's someone I met through work. I didn't intend for it to happen. It just. I don't know how it happened, but it did. I never wanted to hurt you. Nathan's head was spinning. He felt like everything he knew about his life had just been shattered in an instant. The woman he had trusted, his partner, the mother of his children, had been hiding a part of herself from him, and it was far worse than he could have imagined. I can't believe this, he whispered. You've been lying to me. Behind my back, for how long? How long, Emily? 3 months, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Nathan felt as though the ground had been ripped from beneath him. 3 months. 3 months of lies, of secrets, of betrayal. He didn't know how to feel. His chest ached with pain and anger. I need space, Nathan said, his voice shaking with emotion. I can't do this right now. I need to think. Without waiting for a response, Nathan walked out of the kitchen and grabbed his jacket. He left the house, stepping into the cold night air, feeling completely numb. The next few weeks were a blur for Nathan. He didn't know how to process what had happened, and he didn't want to be around Emily. He spent long hours at work, trying to avoid coming home to the tension that filled the house. He took long walks, just trying to clear his head, but it was impossible. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that his entire life had been a lie. He spent countless nights lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. He tried talking to his friends, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were just offering empty words of sympathy. Nobody understood the depth of the betrayal. They could offer advice, but they didn't know what it felt like to be in his shoes. One day, a few weeks after the confrontation, Nathan returned home to find Emily sitting on the couch, looking at him with a mixture of guilt and regret. She had been trying to contact him, but he hadn't responded to her messages. She hadn't heard from him for days, and she knew this was the moment she had been dreading. Nathan, she said, her voice pleading. Please, we need to talk. Nathan stood in the doorway for a long moment, trying to decide whether he should walk away or face her again. I don't know if I can forgive you, Emily, he finally said, his voice steady but filled with pain. I don't know if I can trust you again. Her eyes filled with tears. I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you, Nathan. I swear I do. I'm so sorry. Please, just give me a chance to make things right. Nathan took a deep breath, but the anger and betrayal still burned in him. He had to make a choice, and it wasn't going to be easy. I don't know if I can stay, he whispered. But I can't keep living in this lie either. The days following that conversation felt like a haze to Nathan. He had moved into the guest room, a physical separation that matched the emotional distance between him and Emily. He had always been a man of action, someone who faced challenges head-on, but this felt different. How do you fight back when the person who betrayed you is the one you love? How do you come to terms with the lies when the life you've built has suddenly crumbled in front of you? Nathan tried to keep his daily routine, working long hours at the office, throwing himself into projects that demanded all his attention. But nothing could distract him from the thoughts that tormented him at night. The image of Emily with Derek, the whispered confessions of love, those moments he had overheard, they haunted him. Every time he saw Emily, her face filled with regret and sorrow, but Nathan wasn't sure he wanted to hear her apologies anymore. How could he believe that she truly loved him after everything? The trust they had built over years of marriage was shattered beyond repair, and no amount of apologies could glue it back together. One evening, a week after their confrontation, Nathan found himself in the kitchen, preparing dinner for himself. He hadn't seen Emily much that day, aside from brief exchanges of pleasantries. As he chopped vegetables, he heard the familiar sound of her footsteps approaching, the same way she used to come into the kitchen to help with dinner preparations. Nathan didn't turn around. "Nathan," Emily's voice was softer than usual, and there was a hesitance to it. "Can we talk?" Nathan paused for a moment before continuing to chop the vegetables. He wasn't sure what she expected from him anymore. The woman he had known for so long, the one who had been his partner, his equal, felt like a stranger now. "About what?" Nathan asked, his voice quiet, but cold. "About everything," she said, taking a deep breath. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I can't live like this, Nathan. I've been a wreck, and I want to fix things, if you'll let me." Nathan stopped chopping and slowly turned to face her, his eyes narrowing slightly. He studied her expression, her downcast eyes, the tears threatening to spill. She looked as though she wanted him to believe her, to believe that she had truly learned from her mistakes. But how could he? How could he trust her again when everything she had done felt like a betrayal of everything they had built? "Emily," Nathan began slowly, his voice quiet, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can look at you the same way after all of this. You've hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible." Her face fell at the words, and she stepped forward, reaching out a hand toward him. "I know. And I'm sorry. But I need you to understand, I've been lost. I've felt alone for so long, and when Derek came into my life, it just felt easy. But I see now what I've done, and I can't take it back. But I want to fix this, Nathan. Please, let me prove it to you." Nathan stepped back, his chest tightening as he looked at her. He felt the familiar tug of love, but it was drowned out by the overwhelming hurt and the crushing weight of betrayal. The pieces of their marriage, of their life together, were shattered, and no matter how many apologies she offered, nothing could fix what was broken. "I don't know if we can fix this, Emily," he whispered. "I need space. I need time to figure out what's next. I don't even know what I want anymore." For the first time in their relationship, Emily looked at him with understanding. She didn't try to argue, didn't try to convince him otherwise. She knew that the damage was done, and that Nathan's decision was no longer in her hands. In the days that followed, Nathan became more and more withdrawn. He spent time with Ava when he could, but his heart wasn't in it. He went through the motions, waking up, going to work, and coming home, but every night, the questions circled his mind. Should he forgive her? Should he walk away and leave everything behind? Or was there a chance to rebuild, to salvage what was left of their marriage? One morning, Nathan got a call from his friend Ethan, who had been checking in on him since the confrontation. Ethan was one of the few people who knew about the situation, and Nathan appreciated his support. "How are you holding up, man?" Ethan asked on the phone, his voice full of concern. "I don't know," Nathan replied, sighing deeply. "I'm just trying to keep it together for Ava. But I'm losing myself, Ethan. I don't know what to do." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then spoke. "You don't have to figure it out alone. You're a good guy, Nathan. You don't deserve to live in this limbo. You've got to make a choice, and I think you need to stop letting her control the outcome." Nathan paused, taking in Ethan's words. For so long, he had been trying to fix things for Emily's sake, for the family. But in doing so, he had ignored his own needs, his own pain. Was he really waiting for Emily to change, or was he just too afraid to let go? "You're right," Nathan said, finally feeling something shift inside him. I can't keep living like this. I need to decide what I want. And I think I need to start thinking about myself for a change. Ethan smiled on the other end of the line. You've got this, Nathan. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. A week later, after much reflection, Nathan made his decision. He called Emily into the living room and sat her down, his heart pounding in his chest. Emily, Nathan began, his voice shaking but steady, I've thought long and hard about everything. And I've made my decision. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living in a marriage built on lies. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you've done, and I don't think I can trust you again. I'm leaving. Emily's face crumpled as she absorbed his words. Nathan, please, don't, she started, but he held up a hand to stop her. I need to go, Nathan said, his voice firm. I've lost myself in all of this. I need to find myself again, for me and for Ava. I can't keep pretending that everything's fine. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never wanted to lose you. Nathan stood up, his heart heavy with sorrow, but also with a sense of relief. He had made the right choice, even though it hurt more than anything. I'm sorry too, he said quietly. But I need to do this. Nathan moved into a small apartment, leaving the house that had once been his home. He focused on his work, spent more time with Ava, and started rebuilding his life. He sought therapy to process everything, and slowly, the darkness that had consumed him began to lift. As the months passed, Nathan began to heal. He learned that forgiveness was not about the person who had wronged him, it was about freeing himself from the chains of anger and resentment. While Emily was still a part of his life as the mother of his children, their relationship had fundamentally changed. It was no longer one of partnership, it was one of co-parenting. And though it took time, Nathan began to feel like himself again. He was no longer weighed down by the past, but instead, he looked toward the future with hope.